Sounds True presents Unconditional Self-Acceptance with author, educator, and founder of the Mountain View Zen Center, Cheri Huber. And now Session 1, Your Authentic Nature.
Of our life is determined by the focus of our attention. Every life experience is shaped and molded, in fact, it's created by our relationship with ourselves. All other relationships are a reflection of that primary relationship with ourselves. Or, as we say, life is as good as your relationship with yourself. The techniques and tools that we will be exploring in this series are particularly helpful when dealing with strong emotion. But we will be going far beyond strong emotion, because the relationship you will be forging with yourself in this program will be with the conscious, compassionate awareness that is your authentic nature. This program will be most beneficial to you if you approach it as a retreat. It's not something you'll be able to experience fully while driving. And in fact, there are many guided imageries and visualizations you're asked to do with eyes closed. Definitely not suitable for driving. Many of the tools you'll be receiving in this program will become more powerful to you as you practice them and apply them in your life. I hope you'll find yourself returning to this course as your awareness increases and as you find yourself encountering new and challenging life circumstances. You may find that there are particular exercises that speak to your current situation, and you'll choose to repeat those regularly as you move into a deeper understanding of your relationship to those particular issues. There are several written exercises in the program, after which you'll be asked to stop and jot down your experience. You'll see imageries, so you may want to have a journal to use for this retreat. The goal of the techniques you're offered, as well as of the guided imageries, is to take you to a direct experience of unconditional love and acceptance. By the end of the program, you will have a beginning-to-end process for finding your way beyond any difficult life experience into the wisdom, compassion, and joy that is your original nature. The Buddha taught us to live in contemplation of body, feelings, mind, and the contents of the mind. Thoreau famously advised us that the unexamined life is not worth living. I suspect these wise individuals would agree that it is the process of contemplation and examination enabling us to see what is contemplation and examination, enabling us to see what is actually so, rather than simply assuming what we've been taught to believe is true, that not only makes life worth living, but enables us to know the freedom, possibility, and joy that are our birthright, our authentic nature. Supposedly, when the Buddha spoke with people, he would tell them to believe nothing he said. The reason for this is that believing doesn't actually help us. Only what we know in our own experience is helpful to us. The Buddha wanted people to look deeply, to see clearly, and find out for themselves what is so for them. I find that an excellent approach to life and all its mysteries. So I invite you into a process of exploration and questioning. A spirit of openness to possibility, a willingness to see beyond what we've been taught to believe, to move into a state of not knowing that is the source of all wisdom and compassion. We know from modern physics that everything in the universe is moving. Nothing is the same for the tiniest amount of a second that we can measure. The Buddha's way of saying this, life is flux. That movement is the beginning point of what we'll be exploring in this series. Later, we'll look into the relationship of the movement to sensation, how the sensation gets labeled, how we react emotionally to the label, and finally, how a pattern of behavior gets associated with that sequence. This energy called emotion and our relationship with that energy. In my experience, emotion is nothing more complex than physical sensations in the body combined with labels and stories. When we were little, energy moved easily, smoothly, unselfconsciously through our bodies, and we simply responded to it in a way that was natural and appropriate. The proof of that is how easy it is for us to be around small children when they are simply being themselves unselfconsciously. We tend to find them charming and adorable. The process of socialization, what the people who raised us used from their own background socialization to take us from that relaxed, easy, spontaneous, natural state to someone who would be able to fit into society, often left us with a feeling that there was something wrong. Needs, rather than being something that is natural to a human being, things that must be met and fulfilled, not only to do well in life, to thrive, but simply to survive. Our very needs became internalized as something bad or wrong. And so what we're going to attempt to do now is to realize that the way we react to our emotions is conditioned. We were taught these reactions. There's nothing inherently valuable about the way we have learned to be in relationship to our emotions. So as we begin to explore emotion moving through the body, we can become once again much closer to that easy, relaxed, spontaneous, natural state that is the state of a child, while also taking full advantage of the intelligence and awareness that we have as adults so that we can be truly appropriate, kind, sensitive, compassionate, and effective in each moment of our lives now as adults. So let's take a closer look at emotions. What emotions are, where we feel them, how we feel them, what our relationship is with them, not as a theory, but as an actual fact inside our own bodies. We're going to do a guided imagery that will assist you in becoming more familiar with imagery, that will assist you in becoming more familiar with emotions in your body, and your relationship with those emotions. So in this guided imagery, and I would encourage you not to do this if you're driving, but wait until a time that you can sit back and relax and close your eyes and focus deeply inward. In this guided imagery, you will be looking around in your body for different physical sensations, feelings, experiences, and just noticing what arises for you as a label or a way of talking about what it is that you're feeling. Anything that arises for you is the right thing. There's no wrong way to do a guided imagery. A guided imagery simply enables us to see and feel and experience at a deeper level than our thinking mind what is going on with us. So if you start through the imagery and you begin to hear voices of, I'm not getting this right, I don't understand, I'm not keeping up, it's going too quickly, just notice those voices. Notice your reaction, your response to that. Take a deep breath and just come back and join in again. The beauty of this format is that you can repeat this exercise as often as you would like. And in my experience, each time we repeat an exercise like this, our experience of it gets deeper and deeper. So make yourself comfortable. Sit back and close your eyes and take 1 or 2 nice, long, deep breaths. And see if, as you're taking these breaths, you can just let go, then being right here, breathing in and breathing out. And you'll notice that your attention has a tendency to want to hop around, drawing you here and there, maybe into memories of things that have come before, or maybe anticipation of what you're going to be doing next, or maybe giving you a list of things that you should be doing instead of this. And you just notice that. And gently bring your attention back to the breath. And continue breathing in and out. Feeling your body relax. Feeling yourself slowing down. Feeling yourself slowing down. It might even be helpful to take a couple of breaths, imagining that your body is like a big balloon. And as you breathe in, you expand the balloon all the way down to your toes and out to your fingertips, making the balloon as large as possible. And then as you let the breath go, the balloon collapses in. And again, you inflate the balloon and let the breath go. And for the next few moments, I'm going to mention a number of emotions. And I'm going to ask you to look and see several things in relationship to those emotions. Notice where in your body you feel the emotion. Notice what it feels like and how you feel about it. Nice long deep breath. And as you get to the bottom of that exhalation, would you look to see where in your body you feel happiness? Where do you feel happiness? And what does happiness feel like? Can you come up with another way to describe happiness? Is it like bubbles? Is it like a sparkler? Does it feel expansive? And how do you feel about happiness? Do you enjoy feeling happiness? Do you not enjoy it? Are you indifferent to it? let's take a look at sadness. Where in your body do you feel sadness? And what does sadness feel like? If you were to describe that feeling without using the word sad, what? And how do you feel about sadness? Is it okay? Not okay? Are you neutral about it? Let's look now at fear, or perhaps anxiety. Where do you feel fear in your body? Or if you relate more to anxiety, where do you feel anxiety? And what does that feel like? Feel like? And how do you feel about that? How do you feel about fear? Do you seek it out? Do you avoid it? Is it irrelevant in your life? What's your relationship with fear like? How about anger? Where do you feel anger in your body? How would you describe what happens in your body when you feel anger? And what is your response to anger? Do you like it? Dislike it? Have no feeling about it in particular? Let's look now at joy. Where do you feel joy in your body? What does joy feel like? And how do you feel about joy? Is joy a good thing? A bad thing? A no particular relationship with it thing? How about peace? Where do you feel that? What does peace feel like? And how do you feel about it? let's look at one more emotion. Let's look at love. Where do you feel love? What does love feel like? And how do you feel about love? And how do you feel about love? Is love something you welcome? Something you push away? Or are you fairly neutral about it? Now, would you take another nice long deep breath? And just let that go. And notice how you're feeling as a result of doing this guided imagery. Just check in with your body. And notice what you're feeling. And then once again, bring all of your attention and awareness to the breath. Feeling the breath as it moves in the body expanding with each inhalation and contracting with each exhalation. Allowing the deepening of the breathing to bring you more fully into your body. And then, in preparation for opening your eyes and ending the imagery, would you wiggle your fingertips, wiggle your toes, maybe stretch a little. Take one more nice long deep breath. And at the bottom of the exhalation, open your eyes. In a different way. One of the advantages of the question about how did you react to that emotion is that some people really prefer a particular emotion and really dislike, distrust, try to avoid another. Now, some of us who are used to thinking of emotion as positive or negative would say, well, most people like positive emotions and try to avoid negative emotions. And in my experience, that's not true. It is true that most people will say they prefer happiness to sadness, but definitely not all people. There are large numbers of people who are much more comfortable with sadness than with happiness. There are people who have anger as their primary and preferred emotion, other people who are terrified of anger. So it's not a matter, even though growing up, about emotions and how we should be and what are positive and what are negatives and how to have healthy emotions and that sort of thing. To me, it's more important to see how each one of us is in relationship to our own emotions. It's much more important to be clear about how we are emotionally than to hold ideas and beliefs about how people should be. So to practice with this imagery and practice in your daily life, walking around noticing what you're feeling in your body. I like to feel something in my body and then ask myself that question. If I didn't have a label for that, if I didn't believe that that meant I'm feeling X, Y, or Z, what would that feeling feel like? Oftentimes, what people consider to be negative emotions are described as feeling like there's a huge weight on my chest, or feeling like there's negative emotions are described as feeling like there's a huge weight on my chest, or feeling like there's on my chest, or feeling like there's a pressure down onto my head, pushing me down into the ground, or I feel an absence of feeling. There's nothing there. As a matter of fact, oftentimes for people who are depressed, the emotional reaction, the emotional response is not one of sadness, it's one of a feeling. So a big clue about depression is looking inward and realizing that there's nothing there. There are no feelings available. So to practice checking in with your body various times during the day, whatever is going on, just noticing how your body feels and the kind of label that goes with that. So to realize perhaps that there are tears in your eyes, to look and see, am I sad? We assume that tears mean sadness. Tears don't always mean sadness. Tears can sometimes mean happiness, as we know. We cry at weddings. We cry at graduations. So tears can mean sadness. They can mean happiness. They can also simply be a product of letting go. There's a great deal of pressure. There's a huge relief, and often tears come with that. So learning to look inward, to see what is so, looking to the head to see how we're feeling. Practice looking to the body, to the emotions and how they're manifesting to see what is so and true for you. As I mentioned, contrary to what perhaps we've been conditioned or taught to believe, there is no one way to be emotional. There aren't right emotions and wrong emotions. Even though as a society, perhaps a group of people would agree that there are more appropriate emotional reactions than others. Emotions are very much an individual process. And it might be helpful for us to, in letting go of that idea that there's a right way to be emotional and that somehow my particular emotions are not the right way to be, to go back and look a little bit, explore a little bit about how we came to have the relationship that we have with our emotions. Everything about us has been conditioned. Now, the difficult part of this for us to realize as adults is that our conditioning started so long ago. It is so deeply ingrained that we can't recognize conditioning for what it is. If we spend time around small children, especially infant to toddler stage, we can get a sense that a child doesn't have the same rules about emotion that we do. A child doesn't have any of the rules about behavior that we have. The process of socialization is designed to take a child from being in this kind of natural, authentic state to being someone who can not here to say that that is a good or a bad thing. It's simply helpful for us in coming to a place of peace and clarity within ourselves to know how that process happens to us. So there's an infant, and the infant is actually, we could say perhaps something like a need-meeting machine. And this is a good thing. It's a part of survival of the species. The child needs certain things. The child needs to be fed, needs to be kept dry and warm, and needs to be nurtured. It needs to be held and cuddled and connected with in that way. So the child's way, the infant's way of getting those needs met is to cry. The child only really has one form of communication, and that is to express its distress, through the loudest noise that it can make. And if we just look at, say, an average family, whoever that might be, an average family who has a new child and wants that child. So let's assume that the parents are kind and caring and love this child and want to help this child grow up to be the very best, most loving, well-adjusted individual that they can help to produce. Let's just have that as our starting premise. And let's keep in mind that this is certainly not the case with all or even most children. So there's the infant communicating his or her needs and the caregivers responding. And this goes on fairly well for a period of time, depending upon the belief systems of the parents. Now, many people in this society have been conditioned to believe that meeting the needs of small children is the way to spoil them, the way to turn them into manipulative little creatures who are attempting always to get what they want. If we don't assume that, if we assume that the child is simply attempting to survive, then that communication of I need this is fairly nonstop, and the parents are required to adjust to those needs in whatever way is possible. Again, this goes on for whatever period of time until, in most families, the parents decide, whether consciously or unconsciously, that's enough. Now it's time for the child to begin to learn. So the child now needs to learn to use the toilet rather than diapers. The child needs to learn to eat at particular times rather than any time. The child needs to go to sleep at certain times and wake up at certain times rather than whenever the child feels physically like sleeping and waking up. So this is a huge period of growth and development, usually for the parents as well as for the child. Now, a part of the process of socialization, again, not saying that this is a good or a bad thing, it's just what happens to most of us. Part of that socialization process is giving the child information that that way of reacting is not all right. Very often at around age 2, which I personally find fascinating, that stage of development has been named the terrible twos, the child begins to assert a personal will, and that personal will is asserted in the form of no. So the child is asked to do something and the reaction is no. Temper tantrums, screaming, yelling, resisting, fighting, hitting, biting, all kinds of behaviors come into play as the child is attempting to find his or her way in a very alien, strange, unfamiliar, and I project, often perceived as hostile environment. So the relationship between the parent and the child increasingly turns into one that is adversarial. As the parents are trying to mold and guide the child into acceptable behavior, the child is attempting to resist that, having really no knowledge of social conventions, polite behavior, other people's feelings, fitting in, little motivation to give up meeting their own needs in order to please an external authority. So if we sort of fast forward through that period of time, a time in which a child is hearing a lot of things like, no, stop that. I told you to put that down. You need to, I'm going to count to 3. Don't do that. Stop that. Put that down, and variations on that theme. A great deal of that kind of information, what we might call negative information, is coming at a child during this particular stage of development. As the child gets a little older, there is an increasing desire to please, to fit in, and usually for most children at around the age of 6 or 7, the child reaches the conclusion that what's going on, all of this painful interaction, is his or her fault. And the psychological reasons for that interaction is his or her fault. And the psychological reasons for that have a lot to do with it's not possible for the parent to be wrong at that deep level. The child's survival depends upon the goodwill and good wishes of the parent, and so the child internalizes the struggle and says, it's me. And at around the age of 6 or 7, very often makes a decision to be perfect. And perhaps you can actually remember the time when you made that decision to be perfect. That if you were just perfect, if you would just do it right, if you would be a good child, then you wouldn't get into trouble. Your parents would be happy. Perhaps your parents wouldn't fight, and your family would be the way you want it to be, and everything would be okay. At that point, what happens to us is that we internalize those parental messages. And we develop what some people call the judge or the critic, a voice inside us that is giving us the same kind of information that we received from adult authority figures. So we, instead of waiting for someone to say, you shouldn't do that, that's not okay, you shouldn't feel that way, you can't say that, we begin a process of saying those things to ourselves. So we become self-regulating. And now, increasingly, we're looking to that conditioned system, that conditioned, programmed system of how you behave, how you think, and how you feel to know how we should act. We're no longer looking to ourselves. We're looking to what we've been taught is the right way and the wrong way to be. So in this process, what has happened to us, incorrectly, but to the best of our ability, we've internalized this information we've been receiving, and it becomes our survival system. So now, instead of looking inward to see how I'm feeling, to see what's going on with me, to know how to behave, to know how I feel, and therefore how I want to act, I look to that conditioned survival system. And it gives me information about how I should be, how I should feel, what I should say. And that becomes the authority for our lives. It is in that process that we receive information about our emotions. This emotion is all right. It's okay to feel that. It's okay to express an emotion in that way. And these ways can be very confusing because while many adults want children to be happy, they don't want children to be too happy. It's not okay. They don't want children to be too happy. It's not okay to be silly. It's not okay to be giddy. It's not okay to be too excited. It's not okay to be loud. It's not okay to be sad if there's nothing to be sad about, to be upset if there's nothing that someone else deems as worthy of being upset about. It's not okay to have an emotion or a mood that isn't based in what someone else considers a justifiable circumstance.
This concludes Session 1 of Unconditional Self-Acceptance with Cheri Huber. Our program continues with Session 2.